Hi, my name is Omar Kamal. I'm here in New York for a show at the Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I'm not exactly a jazz musician or your pure jazz musician, but I'm been in the jazz world and the outskirts for as long as I've done music. I've started with classical piano and then moved slowly into singing the Great American Songbook and the swing and all that sort of world, and that brought me closer and closer to jazz, uh, and to the point that jazz is probably the only thing on my playlist whilst I'm driving or doing anything. But I'll say again, I'm probably not the standard jazz musician. Very happy to be here. It's quite a new concept for me. So um, if you have any comments, questions, please shoot across. Welcome Omar to the outskirts of jazz by coming on to the Alternative Venues for Jazz Facebook. We're happy to have you here. Thank you, Gail. And my career. So basically, I've been into music, like I said, for as long as I can remember, and I started with a classical piano, and it was all very kind of amateur until I finished kind of college. I didn't do any music or anything like that. I went into engineering, funny enough, and then when I finished, I've always kept myself very busy with music, and then eventually I was doing my own private shows here and there in the UK, and even back in my original home in Palestine. And eventually I signed a record deal with Sony Music, and we produced an amazing debut album called Serenade. Went over to the US, and it was kind of a dream start. It was almost too good to be true, a fairy tale, one might say. It was all done in Vegas and LA, and I got to work with some greats like Bob Rock and Dave Pierce, and a lot of the songs on the album were mixed by Al Schmidt at Capitol Studios. Recorded some of the album at Capitol Studios, so it had all the history, it had all and the experience. So it was a great start for me to start there. And then we released the album, and then suddenly I've got this association that you may find somewhere, because I in the swing and the jazz, and especially the Great American Songbook. I have this association that's or a nickname in the media that's reads Palestinian Frank Sinatra. Yeah, well, may his soul rest in peace. That's right. I think he passed at the beginning of the pandemic, Al Schmidt. But anyway, as I was saying, this association kind of gave the whole project a bigger boost. The Palestinian Frank Sinatra, but obviously it's something that media loves to latch on, because it's a very easy association, and yeah, exactly. And from that point, I was touring and doing big shows around the Middle East and some in Europe. We even got to perform in the pyramids, the Giza pyramids in Egypt, with amazing bands and amazing big bands from London and elsewhere. So yeah, it was a great start that kind of put me in a very lucky position. Now, I think some of the questions that you had was what got you into jazz, or what was your inspiration. I would say it's between two artists. First of all, obviously Frank Sinatra, because in a way, he was the one artist that had the maybe the enough delivery and attitude and storytelling in his singing that got me onto that whole world. And another one is, funny enough, an Arabic artist called Ferouz, a singer from Lebanon, and she a lot of her music towards the end of her career involved jazz, and from a young age that kind of introduced me kind of in a subtle way into the world of jazz. So when I started listening to Sinatra and the rest, also obviously a lot of focus on Sinatra, but to me he represents that kind of that world, and to a lot of people probably. So that kind of crossover between the Middle East, the Arab world, and America and the rest of the world, because it's all, you know, an international sound, was probably the beginnings of the love for jazz. Do I mind the comparison to Frank Sinatra? Are you honored by it? I don't mind it, and you know, it's always a funny one when you're trying to make clear that you're not above it, because of course it's an honor, but at the same time, I think no one wants to be, you know, any other version of anyone else in anything, because I think everyone appreciates their own identity in whatever they do, and I certainly do. So the comparison is there, whether we accept it or not. But I think it will evolve into, or maybe get pushed as I grow and do more and more in that world. So in the world of music. So it doesn't mind. Actually, it is a great honor, but you don't need me to say that, you know, people only need one Sinatra, and you know, everyone else that comes in will be writing their own story. So got Scott asking about Quincy Jones. So Quincy, I met him in Dubai at I think a dinner party. It was right after we released the first album, and I got to meet him, and we actually talked for hours. We're probably up until 5 a.m. He's, you know, he still parties very hard, Quincy Jones, but you know, from the comfort of his seat, obviously. And he was telling me great stories about, you know, everything that he's done, and I was asking him questions. And then later in the year, I got to go and visit him in his home in LA. We talked again about, you know, music and projects and other things. So he's such an icon. The first thing he asked me was, I think it was my horoscope, because he obviously very much believes in kind of that world and its impact on each person's path. So the first thing he said to me was like, "What's your horoscope?" And I said, "I think it's Pisces." And then he fist bumped and said, "Pisces together all the way." So I guess, you know, I guess he liked the fact that we're both Pisces, so there might be some common understanding there. He was telling me stories about his, you know, the experience with Sinatra, obviously, Michel Legrand as well, because I think he was his roommate in Paris when they did their degree together. Michel Legrand is another one. Well, again, may his soul rest in peace. Another one of my influences, and I got to meet him in London. It was probably one of his last shows that I've seen him in. He was doing music from the movies. He did it with the London Philharmonic or something like that in London. So he was another one of great influences in jazz, and just, and soundtrack music, and his writing was for me, was tremendous. It was very delicate and very almost, sometimes you might call it very calculated, or mathematical, but that doesn't have to be, a bad thing. But it was always very heartfelt, and I could really relate to a lot of the Michel Legrand stuff. He was an amazing composer indeed, and I've actually, I have a couple of his songs in one of the albums I've recorded in the past few years. So what else can we talk about? Maybe we can talk about something else. Let me bring up the list. I mean, advice. I mean, that's always a nice one to talk about. I suppose, again, with Quincy, we're talking about how the world of music has evolved into something that might be a bit alien to a lot of the musicians or the people that come from a different era. Even someone like me, I'm not that old. I'm not old at all. And but I was listening to all the Sinatra records and jazz records at age 14, 15, and almost religiously. So how do you deal with the ever changing, and especially now the way it is, and not just music wise, just the industry as a whole? How do you deal with it evolving in that way? We've gone from the world of the beautiful music accompanying along with beautiful the movies, the cinema, the whole kind of dream world that is now kind of shifted. And I certainly felt it as I got deeper into the industry, and how it's become something that requires a lot of show business, obviously, but I think the music gets kind of pushed back. Well, certainly that version of music. And the questions that we were or that I had, or the topic that I was discussing with Quincy was the song. It's always about the song and the melody. And he always said melody is king. If you got a good melody, everything else will follow very easily. And the thing that we could both agree on is that music writing, composing is not about just the inspiration. You can get the inspiration anywhere. Obviously, you can be on the piano or at the piano, or you can be in your car or anything like that. But you work from wherever that first moment of inspiration starts. You take it, and then you work your way into. You start exploring that project. It is almost a project, and then until you reach the perfect kind of sculpture, if it's right to call it that, at that point. Okay, well, let me see some of the questions. What is the Palestinian folk music? It's quite. I mean, it's quite. It is quite unique to kind of the Palestinian folklore, but it's almost shared with the Levant area, which is Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, that whole region. So they all kind of share the same sound. It's hard to describe it. It's folk, I guess. It's a lot of obviously dancing that accompanies the music, almost similar to kind of Celtic kind of folk dance and that sort of thing, but the music is obviously very different. Jazz is not really at all part of the music scene in Palestine, although you'll have people that appreciate it, but I would say it's very far from you don't hear it. If you don't hear it on the street, to me, it's it's not part of that culture. So you certainly don't hear that. So What else can I talk about? Let's see. Well, and I'm here in New York actually for the first time. I don't know if it's a great moment or a strange moment to be in New York, because obviously everything that's happening in the world, but certainly grateful to be here, especially with a show as big as being at the Lincoln Center, the Jazz at Lincoln Center, and that's happening on Monday. And we've certainly been looking forward to this point, really building up for it, doing a lot of soul searching at the same time to try and get this, the right presentation for this moment in the career. And the show is going to be, it's always kind of a mix. When I get asked what sort of music that best describes what you do, what genre, it's always going between world music, because there's some Arabic sketches in there and other things, and the jazz music. So it's always those two. And I think jazz can easily go into kind of the world stage, because it is such an international genre. But there's a lot of world music, because there's the Arabic, there's sometimes Spanish, Italian involved. So it is a mix, but the show is gonna kind of stay true to the venue of jazz, which is kind of reflected in the lineup that we have, which is a kind of a core and three horns. And it will kind of be, because the reason I mentioned the lineup, because we've done orchestras in the past, we've done a lot of the bigger lineups, but this one, to me, really the intimate venue, because we're at the Appel Room as well. The intimate venue, the intimate sound is sometimes it's a different experience altogether, but it's such an important one, and sometimes I tend to prefer that to the big kind of a big stage or a big band and that sort of thing. What else can we talk about? Let me dig into my. Let's see. Younger musicians. Although I am quite, as I said, young, certainly in my career, I would say the only advice that I kind of always like to give is one that's to do with the answers, the questions that you ask yourself along the way. Of course, you do music because you love music and you want to be part of that world. That should be, for granted. Although, some people, including myself, and I think others, forget that along the way. And to always keep reminding yourself of that is of extreme importance, because if you forget that, you're going to be left without answers. You're going to be asking yourself all sorts of questions and thinking why am I doing this, or doing it for the wrong reasons. So definitely stay focused on the real reasons you're doing it. And I've got a question coming in here. New recording. So just before the pandemic, we released an album of my own original work called "Show Me the Light." It is meant to also kind of showcase the spiritual or journey, or just journey, in its own right, searching for light, especially again in this industry. But the music doesn't necessarily, it isn't, of course, a spiritual one. But "Show Me the Light," really, a lot of the songs, and they can be almost like a diary of the 2 years I spent making that album. and each song will have come at the point where, you know, I could tell you a story where it connects to a certain event or experience in my life. Show Me the Light again almost resembles the show that we do, because it's world music. It's got a range of, you know, Arabic and Spanish and jazz and swing, but it's you know, it's a beautiful album that whenever I listen to, it's almost like listening to a live show, but that doesn't mean that it's got a raw sound. But it was definitely, there was a bit of experimentation in it, so it was a lot of fun to make. But there's definitely some experimental sounds in there. British accent, yes, indeed. So I I did my engineering degree in the UK. I spent about 10 years now in the UK. I've got a wife and daughter in England as well. So yeah, it was a pretty easy transition into the British accent. I mean, the UK is a beautiful place. Weather is a bit questionable, but it's a really nice place, nice crowd, especially London. Obviously, London is again another one of those big cities where there's a lot of the iconic venues. And had again, just before the pandemic, I had a show in one of the venues in the West End where the Tina Turner show takes place. And UK, yeah, they do love their jazz. There's a lot of great jazz clubs, and certainly, you know, Ronnie's and all the others. A lot of the musicians that tour with me and us, you know, got regular gigs there. So I'm very related to the jazz world. My MD in London is a Ronnie Scott's regular, and I do go and watch him there a lot. So at the Appel Room, okay, I've got a question coming here. So the size of band is going to be a rhythm section. I've got piano, bass, guitar, drums, and I've got 3 horns, trombone, tenor sax, and trumpet. It's one of my favorite lineups, actually, because it's halfway between the very intimate, almost, you know, kind of vocal and rhythm affair, and the kind of bigger band, maybe 4 or 5 horns and rhythm and strings. So one thing that I do kind of indulge in is strings, because there's nothing nicer than a nice strings section alongside alongside a nice brass arrangement, essentially. So that is one thing I kind of saw a lot in the Sinatra records, especially Nelson Riddle, which to me was one of the best arrangers, certainly around Sinatra. Another question coming in. Do I use my engineering degree, or are you totally into music? I am actually totally into music. I've used it for a little bit, but fairly on, I decided to put it on the side and focus solely on this. Now, that was helped by the record deal and things like that kind of pushed me more into that world. But I've always had the plan, even whilst doing my degree. I've always seen myself very much as a musician and singer. So I forgot to probably mention that, or maybe I did, that I play the piano, and I'm more of a musician, although not very kind of not by not through a degree or anything like that than I am a singer. Although I love both worlds, so I kind of live more in the world of composing and playing. But of course, my main trade with touring and things like that is singing, of course. And that's it. Now, I do want to. I know we're running out of time, And I do want to kind of probably say one last thing before I leave you guys. I wish I had, you know, some interaction with you or anyone who is watching. But you know, I would love to see you if you are in around New York. Would love to see you. If not, maybe some other chance. We're trying to build up a tour. Hopefully, if everything goes well with the pandemic and all, to build a tour next year around the US. So expand this debut in New York, and we're also working on a new record that is also going to have this intimate sound. It will be very much closer to jazz than anything else, but obviously not pure jazz, but more of the mainstream jazz, if that's the right description for it. And yeah, I'm hoping for the best for myself, of course, and everyone else. I know this is a community of jazz musicians, and wish the best for everyone. You know, stay in it and stay at peace. And you know, soon I think we'll all be back together in venues and theaters, and that's certainly what we're trying to do now. It's not as simple as it used to be. I think we also took it for granted a little bit, all the traveling and touring, and, you know. But now we're having to appreciate it more, but certainly work hard to get it all to happen. But it's all part of it. You know, we're lucky enough to be making music. So that's probably the last message I'm gonna leave you guys with. So I hope to see you soon. Is there any other questions or things that we need to do before I go? But it's been such a pleasure to be on this platform, and again to be included in a pool of jazz musicians is certainly an honor. I feel like I'm a bit of a trespasser, but I'm certainly, you know, my heart is certainly fully in that world, and you know, and hopefully I'll get to share with you more music in that world, and from in the jazz world, from the next record. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Gail, and see you soon.